President Nasser, may I ask you, sir, when will your country be able to expel the Israelis from the Egyptian Sinai Peninsula and reestablish your possession of that ancient Egyptian land?
Well, of course, I would like that to be tomorrow. You know that occupation of our territory is almost now about 3 years. It is not only about the Egyptian territory, the Sinai Peninsula. It is also occupation of the Israeli forces of the western bank of Jordan and the Golan Heights of Syria. This is really a big problem for us. After the occupation, we accepted the United Nations Security Council resolution. And we are willing, of course, for a peaceful solution. Of course, as you know, the main part of this resolution is the withdrawal of the occupied forces. Until now, there was no result. Hearing went on between the Arab countries and Israel for about 18 months, but the Israelis refused to express their point of view. They said only they want to sit with the Arabs. So we have to mobilize our forces. We have to mobilize all our resources. It is not only our right to liberate the occupied territory in our country, but I think it is our duty. I hope it will be very soon.
I'm Roland Evans. Sitting with me here in Kuba Palace in Cairo, Egypt, interviewing President Nasser, is Mr. William Toohey, the Middle East correspondent of the Los Angeles Times. Bill?
President Nasser, there are reports now circulating in Cairo and...
Yeah. I'm Roland Evans. Sitting with me here interviewing President Nasser in Kuba Palace in Cairo, the capital of Egypt, is Mr. William Toohey, the Middle East correspondent of the Los Angeles Times. Bill?
President Nasser, reports are now circulating in Cairo and other world capitals that you recently visited the Soviet Union. I wonder whether you could tell us whether you did indeed visit the Soviet Union in the last 2 weeks, within the last 2 weeks, and if so, what was the purpose of the visit?
Well, I don't know who was responsible about the publication of such news. In fact, we have continuous contacts with the Soviet Union. You know the role of the Soviet Union in the Middle East problem. But recently, I learned about this news as you learned.
Well, did you, sir, go to the Soviet Union?
I would like to go to the Soviet Union. I think that the time now is good time to go to the Soviet Union because of the escalation of the war and the bombardments of the Israelis near Cairo.
But did you go within the last 2 weeks to Russia?
Well, really I don't like to, our policy now is not to say yes or no about this question. We leave the speculations.
Mr. President, the Israeli Air Force has actually penetrated deeply into your airspace and has been bombing the suburbs of Cairo. Is it possible, do you have the capacity within your own Air Force to retaliate today against the cities of Israel?
I want to tell you something. After the aggression and after the occupation of our territory and after the destruction of our armed forces, we tried to build up our armed forces again to defend ourselves and to defend our territory against any new aggression. But at the same time, the Israelis were able to receive from the United States of America 88 Skyhawks and 50 Phantoms, in addition to their armed forces, their air force, which were used without heavy casualties during the war of 67. We get, of course, some aeroplanes. We have bombers, as you know. We can retaliate and we can attack. But still, until now, the Israelis have supremacy in air force. Well, few days they were attacking Egypt, attacking Jordan, attacking Syria, at the same time, using their air force.
But, Mr. President, only recently an arrangement was made between France and Libya, which, of course, is a country very close to you in geography and in politics. And those Mirage planes that are going to go from France to Libya, shouldn't they give the United States and Israel a chance to make a similar exchange to keep Israel at the same level with the overall Arab power?
The problem is not the aeroplanes, really. I want to tell you something. The problem which we feel in the Arab countries, not only here in Egypt, problem is the pilots. In order to arrange to have pilots, you need 3 or 4 years. We have more planes than our pilots. This is well known. It was published all over the world. But the question with the Israelis, they have facilities. They can bring pilots from America, from France, from South Africa, immigrating to Israel as Jews. We cannot have that.
Well, President Nasser, how long do you think it would take for the Libyan Air Force to make use of these Mirage planes?
According to my information, they will not receive any airplane this year, 1917. Next year, they will receive, I think, at the beginning, about 8 airplanes, according to the arrangement of the pilots. They don't have pilots also. They don't have 100 pilots. So they will have next year 8 airplanes. After that, 72 and 73, they will have the rest of the airplanes. So there is big publicity according to the balance of power in the area because of the French-Libyan deal. I think it is nonsense because Libya will not receive this year any airplanes. Next year, first 6 months will receive 8 airplanes. I think the second 6 months will receive 8 or 18 airplanes. Then it will continue to 72, 73. The Israelis have received 88 Skyhawks, 50 Phantoms, and now they are waiting for another 50 Phantoms from the United States of America. The Israelis have 2 pilots for every airplane. They have more pilots. They have 50 pilots in France waiting for the Mirages, but the Arabs don't have pilots. So the Israelis have air superiority and air supremacy. They say that plainly. They attack all the Arab countries in one time.
What will Egypt's position be, Mr. President, if President Nixon decides to sell Israel 50 more Phantoms? This decision he says he will make in the next 30 days.
Well, plainly, I think the answer is very simple. We will try, by all means, with the Soviet Union to help us in that connection. Because if the Israelis continue to have air supremacy and control the skies, not only of Israel, but of the other Arab countries, they will try not at all to adopt peaceful solution. Why they adopt peaceful solution? As long as they can have airplanes, bombers, and pilots.
Have you recently asked the Soviet Union for any more military aid or anti-aircraft aid?
Well, of course, we ask always the Soviet Union about such aids from 67 until now.
Mr. President, do you have any plans, or does the Egyptian Air Force have any plans to retaliate in kind against Israel? Israeli planes are now bombing within a few miles of Cairo. Egyptian planes have never yet bombed within the original borders of Israel. Do you have any plans to retaliate against the Israelis?
I can tell you only one thing. We can retaliate. The question is the decision. Until now, we don't have a decision to retaliate. We have to study it.
President Nasser, one more question on this whole business of the Israeli tax. Is it possible to get the kind of equipment from the Soviet Union, SAM-3 sites, the latest model, for instance, of the surface-to-air missile, that could, in fact, control the kind of penetration that is now going on by Israeli aircraft? Is it physically possible to do that? They come in very low.
Well, I think it is possible.
And this would depend on whether you could make an arrangement with Moscow to get latest model anti-aircraft missiles. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, of course. Well, you know, from 1967, we're trying to get more developed equipment from the Soviet Union. But of course, these talks were depending to great extent about the activities of the other side, I mean Israel. Now, as long as the Israelis come on low flying and attack targets in Cairo and in Upper Egypt, and also attack civilian targets, not only military targets. Last week at Maadi, there was a school very near to the barracks which were attacked. I think it will be very logic that the Soviets give us the best air defense.
Mr. President, on a broader war and peace question, is it conceivable today, do you think, that this whole area could again become embroiled in a more or less major war, such as the Six-Day War, such as the 1956 war?
Well, as long as the Israelis occupy and continue to occupy the Arab territory, and as I said, almost about 3 years have passed, well, I think it is our duty to liberate the occupied territory, not only our right, as I said. So they want ceasefire. What is the meaning of ceasefire? The meaning of ceasefire is consent from the Arab people to Israel to continue the occupation of the Arab territory. And they want to stay on the Suez Canal, as it was said to you with your interview with the Prime Minister of Israel. And they said that the other alternative of being on the Suez Canal will be in Cairo. We have to fight, really, to defend ourselves, then we have to fight to liberate our occupied territory. So I cannot see any other alternative except a peaceful solution according to the United Nations resolution. That is withdrawal.
Well, Mr. President, supposing Israel announced tomorrow that she was prepared to withdraw from the occupied territories, would you then, would you be prepared to make an undertaking guaranteeing Israel's sovereignty, guaranteeing her right to exist in the Middle East as a state, guaranteeing her passage through the Suez Canal and the Gulf of Aqaba?
Well, I want to tell you something. There was no declaration from Israel, but we have fulfilled all what you have said now, all these guarantees. All that was said to Yaring when he was here. We said that we agree about the implementation of the United Nations Security Council resolution, the sovereignty, the right to live, the right of the passage in the waterways, all these points in the Security Council. I have it here in my pocket. I can tell you the points, you know the points. But there was no single point from Israel that they agree about the implementation of the Security Council resolution. They thought that they looked to the Security Council resolution as agenda for negotiations. This is not the Security Council resolution.
President Nasser, Premier Meir keeps saying that she simply wants, and Israel wants, to sit down and talk to you, that negotiations can then be worked out. What objection do you, as the leader of the Arab world, have to sitting down with Israeli leaders and trying to come to some political negotiation for a settlement?
You know, I read this interview of Mrs. Meir with you. Mrs. Meir said that she wants to sit with me and the Arabs without any conditions. Then you said in the interview, you have to declare about your intention of the withdrawal from the occupied territory. She said no. She will sit with the Arabs without any conditions. This means for us that we sit with Mrs. Mayer after the occupation of 20% of the Egyptian territory by Israel, after the occupation of 70% of the Jordanian territory by Israel, after the occupation of part from Syria by Israel. We sit with them. We'll be in a very weak position. They will be in a very strong position. This means for us that we go for unconditional surrender. When we look all over the history, those who went to sit with the invaders while they occupy their territories, they went only accepting one condition, that is unconditional surrender.
Mr. President, what about indirect talks? Are you willing to engage in indirect talks with the Israelis while they still occupy part of Arab state territory?
We agreed about that by accepting the United Nations Security Council of November 67. I'll tell you something, there were indirect talks going on by Gunnar Yaring for 18 months. He put questions to us, asking us about our point of view according to the implementation of the Security Council resolution. We answered every question. We said that we accept the sovereignty of Israel, the right of Israel to live, the right of the passage into waterways, all these points. But Israel refused. Israel said that they look to the resolution as an agenda and they want to sit for direct negotiations. So there were indirect negotiations going on for 18 months without an answer. And then Gunnar Yaring said that he has nothing to do and left, and he is now in Moscow.
But Mr. President, it was my understanding that your foreign minister, Mahmoud Riyad, made an agreement with, I believe, Mr. Rogers at the UN last year on the Rhodes formula, which was, of course, the formula which led to the negotiations which set up Israel as a state. Is it your position now, sir, that you would, in fact, engage in Rhodes-type negotiations?
Well, really, I want to correct something. There was no agreement between our foreign minister and the United States foreign minister about Rhodes formula. You know, Rhodes formula, I don't know from where they brought this word, Rhodes formula. This was going on 49.
On the island of Rhodes.
On the island of Rhodes.
Sir.
Well, something took place. Our representative in New York, representatives of the Arab countries in New York, representative of the four big powers in New York, representative of Israel in New York, Gunnar Yaring in New York, Otant in New York, and talks were going on. Well, why they insist about the word Rhodes? Then the Israelis said that they look to Rhodes as direct negotiation, not as indirect negotiation. We said that we look to Rhodes as indirect negotiations, not direct negotiations. Then why we tie ourselves with a formula like that? Well, we have our representative in New York. They have their representative in New York. Gunnar Yaring can go to New York. The big powers have their representatives in New York. Then anyone can come and contact us. We are ready to have contact, but not direct negotiations with the Israelis.
Mr. President, on a somewhat related question, Israel has been attacking the United States for some months now for interfering in trying to arrange a settlement. Israel says she will not accept an imposed settlement and is against the United States talking about it to the Soviet Union or in the Big Four. You attack the United States for giving weapons to Israel. What can the United States do under these circumstances, sir?
Well, there is a great difference between giving weapons, 50 Phantoms, and another 50 Phantoms, and 88 Hawks, and another 100 Skyhawks. There is a big difference between that and talking with the big powers. Well, we are ready to accept anything from the United States if they give us 188 Skyhawks, and if they give us 100 Phantoms, and also some pilots, as some of the United States pilots go to the Israelis and talk as they like to talk with anybody. So really it is not fair to compare the 2 points together.
I'd like to change for a moment, Mr. President, and talk about the Commando Fedayeen activity, the guerrilla warfare along the borders of Israel. Do you feel, sir, that the Fedayeen movement is a threat to the power of leaders of individual countries, like yourself, sir, like King Hussein, Syria, Lebanon?
I think we could not look to it as power. What is the power? What is my power as long as 20% of my country is occupied by the Israelis? What is King Hussein's power as long as about 70% of his country is occupied by Israelis? It is not a question of power or individuals or personnel. It is a question of land and people.
Mr. President, recently people have talked about the Commando movement as a third force in the Middle East. In the event that there were some kind of settlement someday, would not the presence of the Palestinians be a unsettling force? Would the Israelis ever agree to a settlement where the Fedayeen were allowed to operate either from Egypt or Jordan or Syria against Israel even after some sort of settlement?
Well, you know, if we take this question as it is, we'll be neglecting the rights of the Palestinians and the rights of the refugees in their homeland. Why? We have to ask ourselves a question. Why this problem continued for 20 years after 48 war? There were resolutions from the United Nations according to the refugees. Then there was a conciliation committee to bring the Palestinians, the Arabs, and the Israelis together, and the committee was formed from the United States, Turkey, and France. Then everything was neglected. So the refugees continued as refugees. They haven't returned back to their homeland according to the United Nations resolution. So the problem continued for 20 years. If we don't solve the refugee problem, the Palestinian problem, there will be no peace.
Presumably a refugee settlement would be part of a final peace solution. Do you, sir, find that within the Arab world, the Commando leader Yasser Arafat in any way rivals you for the affection and of the Arab people?
You know, it is not a question of rival. It is a question of independence. It is a question of getting rid of the occupation. If Arafat is able today to get rid of the occupation, to establish the Arab sovereignty, you were speaking about the Israeli sovereignty. What is the Arab sovereignty? Our territory is occupied. Well, I will be marching behind Yasser Arafat. It is not a question of individuals.
Mr. President, if I may return to one point. You are the leader of the Arab world as much as any one man is. Over the year 1969, you usually called in many of your speeches for a military solution. Earlier in this conversation, you talked about a political solution. Are you and Egypt now on the side of a political solution through negotiations, say through indirect talks with Mr. Yarin, or do you favor a military solution through force?
Well, if we return back to 67, we came out of the war without anything. We lost all our arms. We lost our army. So our intention, our object by that time was to rebuild our armed force. Then we accepted the United Nations solution. Egypt only and Jordan accepted the United Nations Security Council resolution. Well, there was a debate in the Arab countries. People against the political solution, people supporting military solution. I want to tell you something. There is nothing which is called political solution and nothing is called the military solution. There is a solution. We have to talk for a peaceful solution. On the other hand, we have to establish our force, military force. It is our duty, if there is no peaceful solution, to liberate our occupied territory. So I haven't talked at all recently or lately about military solution. I want to tell you on the 6th of November, I think you mean this speech in the parliament. I talked about peaceful solution, we tried and so on, and the hearing went on for 18 months without a result. So what is the other alternative in front of us? We have to liberate our occupied territory. The other alternative is a big sea of blood and fire and so on. The reports of all over the world in the newspapers, nobody mentioned what I said about peaceful solution. But all what was mentioned, what I said about the alternative, if there is no way of peaceful solution, what we could do, it is the right of every country with occupied territory. So always I talked about that and that.
Mr. President, the Soviet Union was not a power in the Middle East or in the Eastern Mediterranean until quite recently. Do you feel that the Soviet power in this area would increase or decrease with a settlement of the basic problem?
Well, I want to tell you something. I was in close contact with the Soviet Union. They were always for the peaceful solution. They tried by all means to reach a peaceful solution.
You think then that the Soviet Union today is pushing for peace in the area as much as your country is?
You know, I hear sometimes that they don't mean what they say, but I want to tell you something. The Soviet Union were always meaning peaceful solution. I talked with them until today.
Except, sir, that the fact of turmoil continuing in this area gives the Soviet Union ever greater entree. Is that not true?
Well, of course, I want to tell you something. Now we depend to a great extent on the Soviet Union. Well, if the United States gives the new 50 Phantoms to the Israelis, where do we go? We have to go to the Soviet Union. But I want to tell you something. The fact, whatever they get advantages or don't get, they want a peaceful solution.
Why is it, President Nasser, that the Arab countries cannot form a common alliance, a military alliance? You spoke a moment ago of a pilot shortage. Is it possible that you would ever form an alliance with one air force, in alliance, the various countries, one army, so that you would concentrate your power? It now is so diffuse.
Well, I agree with you. It is a problem. It is not an easy problem. You know, dealing with such questions, there are many problems which have to be solved. But I think your point of view is a correct and right point of view. And we tried that when we formed the Eastern Front and the Western Front and the Arab Joint Command. And we will have a meeting next week. We'll have a meeting about the heads of states around Israel whose territory are occupied. And we will try to discuss such questions.
Is it conceivable that a unified command, particularly in the air, could come out of this meeting in the next few weeks or months?
Well, it will need time. It is not an easy question. So I'll tell you something. It was said by Mrs. Meir that we attacked them on 67. I want to tell you something. They were preparing 2 pilots for each plane, and we were shortage of pilots all over the Arab countries. So this is a big proof that we're not preparing for attack. And also, on this time, 3 of our armed forces divisions were in Yemen. If we prepare to attack Israel, I think the first reasonable thing was to bring our 3 divisions from Yemen and to be sure that we have 2 pilots for every airplane and to be sure that we'll have air supremacy. But we were attacked on 67 as we were attacked on 56. 56, there were no troubles with Israel at all. The trouble was with Britain and France because of the nationalization of the Suez Canal.
Mr. President, you did on May 28, 1967, or rather May 23, close the Strait of Tiran, which the Israelis took as a cause of war. And would you do that again if you were to regain the Sinai? Or would would you permit Sharm el-Sheikh to be demilitarized or to have United Nations troops there to guarantee Israeli passage in the event of a settlement?
I want to prove to you my intentions on 67. There were speeches from Israel against Syria by the Prime Minister of Israel and by the Chief of General Staff of Israel. They said that they will be able to walk to Damascus. We declare that we have joint agreement for military defense, and if this happens, we will help the Syrians. The Israelis continued in their threats. Then we moved our troops to Sinai. Then we asked the Secretary General of the United Nations about the withdrawal of the United Nations Emergency Force between Rafah and Eilat. And we asked him to keep these forces in Sharm el-Sheikh and Gaza. These were our intentions. There were no intentions by that time to close Sharm el-Sheikh, because we haven't asked the withdrawal of the UNF from Sharm el-Sheikh. Well, but the answer came that either we keep the force